Picture this, me, 58 years old, standing in my best friend's kitchen at 2 in the morning, finally kissing the woman I'd been secretly in love with for 25 years. The same woman who'd been my maid of honor, my children's godmother, and the person I called every single day for over 2 decades. The same woman whose husband had died just 6 months after mine, leaving us both widowed and questioning everything we thought we knew about ourselves. I'm Rebecca, and this is the story of how I spent a quarter century loving someone I thought I could never have, only to discover that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin when you think your life is over. If you're new here, give this video a like and let me know in the comments what state you're from. This story gets wild and I want to know who's along for the ride. Let me take you back to 1998. I was 33, married to David for 11 years with 3 kids who kept me busier than a one-legged cat in the sandbox. Perfect suburban mom life, you know? PTA meetings, soccer practice, family barbecues. I had everything I was supposed to want. But there was this emptiness inside me that I couldn't explain. That's when I met Claire at a book club. God, Claire. 5'6" with curly auburn hair that never stayed where she wanted it, freckles across her nose, and this laugh that could light up a room. She was married too, to Robert, this sweet accountant who treated her like a queen. We were both good Christian women, devoted wives, loving mothers. We were also about to turn each other's worlds completely upside down. The book club became coffee dates. Coffee dates became long phone calls. Long phone calls became meeting at the park while our kids played, talking about everything and nothing for hours. I told myself we were just really good friends, best friends, the kind of friendship you read about in novels. But friends don't think about each other the way I thought about Claire. Friends don't lay awake at night wondering what it would feel like to hold someone, to really hold them. Friends don't feel their heart skip when a text message comes in. For 25 years, we danced around something neither of us dared name. We were each other's closest confidants, the first person we called with good news or bad news. When my middle daughter broke her arm, Claire was at the hospital before David even got there. When her mother died, I held her while she cried for hours in my living room. Our husbands thought it was sweet that we were so close. "You two are like sisters," David would say, and I'd smile and nod while dying a little inside. Because what I felt for Claire wasn't sisterly. It was consuming, overwhelming, and absolutely terrifying. This was the late 1990s, early 2000s. Being gay wasn't exactly celebrated in suburban Georgia. I had a reputation to protect, children to raise, a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. The thought of people knowing, of losing my family, my community, my identity as Rebecca the soccer mom, it kept me trapped in a prison of my own making. So we kept our friendship appropriate. No lingering touches, no staying overnight at each other's houses, no crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. We became experts at loving each other from a distance, at finding ways to be together without being together. David died first. Heart attack at 53. Right there in our driveway after mowing the lawn on a Saturday morning. One minute, he was complaining about the neighbor's dog. The next minute, he was gone. Just like that. 25 years of marriage over in an instant. Claire was the first person I called. Not 911, not my kids, not my mother. Claire. She was at my house before the paramedics even left, holding me while I fell apart in ways I'd never fallen apart before. The thing is, I wasn't just grieving David. I was grieving the life I'd built around pretending to be someone I wasn't sure I'd ever really been. Does that make sense? I loved David. I really did. He was a good man, a good father, a good husband. But sitting at his funeral, watching Claire across the aisle with Robert, I realized I'd spent 25 years loving the wrong person. That's a horrible thing to think at your husband's funeral, isn't it? But there it was. For 6 months, Claire became my lifeline. She'd come over every morning with coffee and just sit with me while I cried. She'd take care of grocery shopping when I couldn't face leaving the house. She'd stay on the phone with me until 2 in the morning when the loneliness felt like it was going to swallow me whole. Then Robert got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Aggressive, fast-moving, the kind that gives you maybe 6 months if you're lucky. Claire threw herself into caring for him with the same devotion she'd shown our friendship, and I watched her disappear into the role of perfect caregiver. Robert lasted 4 months. 4 brutal months of treatments that didn't work and hope that kept getting crushed. When he died, Claire was a shell of herself. This vibrant, laughing woman I'd loved for decades was just gone. The night after Robert's funeral, Claire called me at midnight, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "Rebecca," she cried, "I need to tell you something, and I don't know how. I loved Robert, I did, but... oh God, I can't say this." I drove to her house in my pajamas, the same way I'd done 100 times over the years. When she opened the door, I saw someone I'd never seen before. Not the controlled, composed Claire who always had everything together, but someone completely broken and raw and real. We sat on her kitchen floor, literally on the floor, surrounded by sympathy casseroles and flower arrangements, and she told me the truth she'd been carrying for 25 years. "I've been in love with you since 1999, she whispered. "That day we took the kids to the lake, and you were wearing that yellow sundress, and you were laughing at something silly my Katie said, and I looked at you and thought, this is what happiness looks like. I've been pretending to be your friend when what I really wanted was to be your everything." I stared at her, this beautiful, broken woman sitting on her kitchen floor, and felt my entire world shift. 25 years of wondering if I was crazy, if what I felt was real, if she could possibly feel the same way. "You have no idea," I laughed through my tears, "how many nights I've laid awake thinking I was losing my mind, loving someone who could never love me back." That kiss changed everything, and nothing all at once. Because even though we'd finally admitted what we'd both known for decades, we were still two 50-something women in conservative Georgia with grown children and grandchildren who knew us as devoted wives and mothers. For the next 3 months, we tried to figure out what we were to each other. We'd meet for coffee and hold hands under the table like teenagers. We'd have sleepovers at each other's houses and spend the whole night talking and kissing and wondering if we'd completely lost our minds. But we were terrified. I had 3 grown kids who'd never seen me with anyone but their father. Claire had her 2 daughters who were already struggling with losing their dad. The thought of coming out at our age in our community felt impossible. That's when my youngest daughter, Sarah, found Claire's journal. Sarah had volunteered to help me clean out some of David's things from the garage when she found this small leather notebook that had somehow gotten mixed in with his stuff. She opened it thinking it might be something of his, but it was Claire's handwriting. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. "Mom," Sarah said, and I could hear something weird in her voice. "Can you come over? And can you bring Claire? We need to talk." My stomach dropped. I knew. Before she said another word, I knew our secret was out. When we got to Sarah's house, she was sitting at her dining room table with the journal open in front of her. Claire went white as a sheet when she saw it. "This fell out of one of Dad's boxes," Sarah said quietly. "I thought it might be his, so I opened it. But it's not Dad's, is it?" Claire had been writing in that journal for 15 years, writing about her feelings for me, about the guilt she felt being married to Robert while loving me, about watching me grieve David and wanting to comfort me in ways she couldn't. The entry that Sarah had opened to was dated just 2 weeks after David's funeral. Rebecca held my hand during David's service today, and I wanted to never let go. I know it's wrong to think this way when she's grieving her husband, but all I could think about was how I wanted to take care of her for the rest of our lives. I want to wake up next to her and make her coffee and listen to her complain about her arthritis and grow old with her. I'm going to hell for thinking these things, but I can't stop. "Mom," Sarah said, looking directly at me, "how long have you two been in love?" I expected anger. I expected disappointment, judgment, maybe even disgust. What I didn't expect was for my daughter to start crying. 25 years, I whispered, because lying seemed pointless now. 25 years you've been torturing yourselves? She said. Mom, do you have any idea how obvious this has been? Do you think we're all blind? Turns out, our kids had been having group chats about us for years. Not just my kids. Claire's daughters Katie and Michelle had been part of this conspiracy too. They'd all been waiting for us to figure out what everyone else apparently already knew. Sarah called an emergency family meeting that weekend. All 5 of our kids, plus spouses, all crammed into her living room like some kind of intervention. Claire and I sat there holding hands, feeling like we were about to be lectured by our own children. "Okay," said my oldest, Michael. "We need to talk about this elephant in the room. You two have been basically married for 25 years. You just never made it official." Katie, Claire's oldest, pulled out her phone. "Mom, do you remember when Michelle graduated high school and we had that party in the backyard? Look at this picture." She showed us a photo from 2015. There we were, Claire and me, standing together watching the kids, and I had my arm around her waist. We looked like a couple, like we belonged together. "Or this one," said Michelle, scrolling through her phone, "from Christmas 2018. Another photo of us, this time decorating Claire's tree together while our husbands watched football. We were laughing about something, completely absorbed in each other, looking happier than either of us looked in photos with our actual husbands." My middle daughter Emma spoke up. "Mom, do you remember when I got divorced 3 years ago and I was staying with you? You called Claire every morning before you even had your coffee. You'd talk to her for an hour, then spend the rest of the day telling me things Claire had said. I used to joke that she was your real spouse." Having our family's blessing was one thing. Dealing with our church and community was something else entirely. The First Baptist Church of Marietta had been our spiritual home for over 20 years. We taught Sunday school there, organized potluck dinners, served on committees. Our kids had been baptized there, confirmed there, married there. It was the center of our social lives. When word got out that Claire and I were more than friends, and in a small town, word always gets out, the reaction was swift and brutal. Pastor Williams, who'd officiated both our weddings and Robert's funeral, called me into his office 2 weeks after our family meeting. "Rebecca," he said, "I'm concerned about what I'm hearing. I think grief might be clouding your judgment. Perhaps you and Claire should take some time apart to pray about this friendship." That was the polite version. Some of our so-called friends weren't nearly as diplomatic. Susan Patterson, who'd been in our book club since the beginning, cornered me at the grocery store. "I always wondered about you two," she said loud enough for half the produce section to hear. "All those coffee dates, all that time together. Poor David and Robert, God rest their souls, probably knew exactly what was going on." The women's ministry group that Claire and I had co-led for 8 years suddenly didn't need us anymore. The church committee I'd served on for a decade found someone else to take my place. Invitations to social gatherings dried up overnight. But the worst was yet to come. Claire's sister Janet flew down from Tennessee specifically to stage what she called an intervention. She showed up at Claire's house with her husband and their pastor, convinced that Claire was having some kind of mental breakdown brought on by grief. "This isn't you, Claire," she kept saying. You're not that kind of person. You're a godly woman, a mother, a grandmother. This is just grief and loneliness making you confused." When I showed up to support Claire, Janet turned on me like I was the devil himself. "How could you do this to her? She's vulnerable right now and you're taking advantage of her pain. You should be ashamed of yourself." That confrontation lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of being told we were disgusting, sinful, delusional. 3 hours of Janet threatening to call child services about Claire babysitting her grandchildren, threatening to tell the church board, threatening to make sure everyone in town knew what kind of women we really were. By the time they left, Claire was devastated. "Maybe they're right," she sobbed. "Maybe this is just grief. Maybe I'm not thinking clearly. Maybe we should stop before we ruin everything." I watched the woman I'd loved for 25 years shrinking back into shame and fear, and I felt something inside me snap. After everything we'd learned about our family supporting us, after David's letter, after our kids practically throwing us at each other, we were going to let a handful of narrow-minded people destroy what we'd waited a lifetime to have? I proposed to Claire during Sunday service, right there in the middle of First Baptist Church of Marietta, in front of God and Pastor Williams and every judgmental person who'd been whispering about us for weeks. Let me set the scene. It was Mother's Day Sunday, and Pastor Williams was preaching about the sanctity of traditional families. He kept making these pointed comments about confusion in our modern world and staying true to biblical values, and I knew he was talking about us. Claire was sitting 3 pews ahead of me with Katie and the grandkids. I could see her shoulders getting more tense with every veiled reference to our inappropriate relationship. She looked smaller and smaller as the sermon went on, like she was trying to disappear into the pew. When Pastor Williams got to the part about certain people in our community leading the others astray, I'd had enough. I stood up. Right in the middle of his sentence, I stood up and walked down the aisle. You could hear a pin drop in that sanctuary. 200 people watching me walk toward the front like I lost my mind. "Excuse me, Pastor," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "but I have something to say about biblical love." His face went white. "Rebecca, this isn't appropriate. Please sit down." "You know what's not appropriate?" I said, turning to face the congregation. "Spending 25 years loving someone and being too afraid to say it because people like you made us believe love was shameful." Claire was staring at me like I'd completely lost it. Maybe I had. I walked over to her pew and got down on one knee, right there in the aisle, pulled out the ring I'd bought the day before, a simple diamond band that had taken most of my savings. "Claire Elizabeth Morrison," I said, my voice echoing in that silent church. "I have loved you since 1999. I loved you when we were married to other people. I loved you when we thought it was wrong. I loved you when we were too scared to admit it. And I love you now when a bunch of people who claim to follow a God of love want to tell us our love is somehow less than theirs." The sanctuary was dead silent except for someone's baby crying in the back. Our husbands knew we loved each other, and they weren't threatened by it. They were happy for us. Our children have been waiting for us to stop pretending and just be together. The only people who have a problem with our love are people who think they get to decide how other people should live. I held up the ring. "Claire, will you marry me? Will you let me love you openly and proudly for whatever years we have left? Because I'm done hiding and I'm done caring what anyone else thinks about it." The whole church erupted. Some people started clapping, mostly the younger folks and a few of the older women who'd been married long enough to recognize real love when they saw it. Others started talking angrily, getting up to leave. Pastor Williams was trying to restore order and failing completely. But all I cared about was Claire, who was crying and laughing and nodding all at the same time. "Yes," she said, loud enough for the whole church to hear. "Yes, Rebecca, it's about time." I slipped that ring on her finger and kissed her right there in the sanctuary, our first public kiss after 25 years of hiding. It was perfect and scandalous and exactly what we needed. We got married 6 weeks later in Sarah's backyard, not in a church. We'd found a new church home at the Unitarian Universalist congregation across town, where the minister was a woman and half the congregation was LGBTQ+. Our wedding was small but perfect. All our kids, all our grandkids, our real friends who loved us no matter what. The biggest surprise was who showed up uninvited. Pastor Williams appeared just as we were about to start the ceremony. He said, "I can't perform this, but I wanted to be here. I've been thinking a lot about what you said that Sunday, Rebecca, about love not being shameful. Maybe an old dog can learn new tricks." Even more shocking, Janet came. Claire's sister, who called us disgusting just months before, flew down from Tennessee and walked Claire down the aisle. She told me before the ceremony, "I was wrong. I watched you two together this weekend, really watched you, and I haven't seen Claire this happy since before Robert got sick, maybe before that. If this is what makes my sister whole, then I'm done fighting it." We've been married for 8 months now. We sold both our houses and bought a little cottage near the lake where we used to take the kids when they were small. We travel, we volunteer at the animal shelter, we host Sunday dinners for our combined family of 15 grandkids who all call us Nana Rebecca and Nana Claire. The old church friends who shunned us, some came around, some didn't. But we found a whole new community of people who love us for exactly who we are. Turns out, when you stop hiding, you attract people who don't need you to hide. I think about David and Robert every day. I think about how they loved us enough to want us to be happy, even if that happiness wasn't with them. They gave us the ultimate gift, permission to love each other without guilt. So if you're out there loving someone you think you can't have, if you're hiding who you are because you're afraid of what people will say, let me tell you what I learned at 58. The people who truly love you want you to be happy. The ones who don't aren't worth keeping around. And hey, if you've got your own late-in-the-life love story, drop it in the comments. Sometimes the best love stories are the ones that start when we think it's too late. Life's too short to spend it pretending to be anyone other than who God made you to be.